China reports a surprise pickup in production at its manufacturers, but is this enough to calm nerves about future growth? And preparing for the winter months, Europe works out its energy strategy as the Russia-Ukraine crisis continues. Hello and a very warm welcome you with World Business Report. I'm Sally Bundock. Also in the programme, the second part in our series on climate change. It takes us to New York. But first of all, as Europe and Moscow clash over Russia's military action in Ukraine, energy companies and experts in Europe are working out how the continent will cope if the Kremlin decides to stop the gas supply. At the 6th annual LNG conference in Singapore, which starts today, delegates are concerned about the effect any change of supply may have. Russia is Europe's biggest supplier of oil, coal and natural gas, with pipelines radiating across the continent. So which countries are likely to be hit hardest if relations between Europe and Moscow get worse? Well, Russia's immediate neighbours, such as Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia and Belarus, are almost completely reliant on Russia for their natural gas. Normally, Ukraine would also get 100% of its gas supply from Russia, but currently it has restricted supplies to Ukraine, and so the exact amount it's receiving at the moment is unclear. Either way, Ukraine still offers an important pipeline to the rest of Europe. 83% of Slovakia's gas originates in Russia, whilst 59% of Polish gas used comes from Russia. Moving further west, and 37% of Germany's gas, 29% of Italy's and 16% of France's gas comes from Russian energy companies. Italy is particularly at risk because the majority of its gas comes via the Ukrainian pipeline, the one that's likely to be switched off first if relations between Kiev and Moscow sour further. But that is where Russian gas needs ends. The rest of Europe, including the UK and Spain, do not receive any. However, of course, they will be affected if there's a rise in global prices, if Russia decides to limit its supply to the continent. Well, I'm joined by Cornelia, Meyer, Chief Executive of Meyer Resources, an international economist and independent energy expert. And if you watch us all the time, you'll know she's a regular here on this programme. Nice to see you again, Cornelia.
Good morning.
So it's that time of year when we head into the winter months in Europe, and there's always that thought in the back of the mind that there could be energy issues, but this year it's much more critical because of what's been going on in Ukraine and Russia. So where are we as we head into the winter months?
Well, we are in a better place than we could potentially be, because last winter was quite mild and the stocks of gas are quite high up. This being said, you know, all in all, Europe gets about 30% of its gas from Russia, and about half of that, so about 15%, comes through that Ukrainian pipeline. Now, Germany will be fine because they receive their gas directly through South Stream, a pipeline that goes directly recently built to Germany. The people who are really going to be affected are the southern European rim, as you said, Slovakia, southeastern European rim, and places like Bosnia-Herzegovina, who get all their gas from the Ukrainian pipeline. And places like, for instance, Sarajevo, the city of Sarajevo is heated in the winter by a gas central heating system, so they would literally freeze to death. But Europe it's their own fault, because one has tried to diversify away from Russia with pipelines, you know, from Azerbaijan through Turkey, called Nabucco. What happened is the Germans said, oh no, Mr. Schroeder went on the board of Gazprom and said, oh no, we don't need Nabucco, this gas, there could potentially be Iranian gas in there as well at some stage. We need South Stream, our direct line to Russia.
But what it shows, doesn't it, is there is no quick answer to this. I mean, this is something that's been going on for years. You know, for each winter we've had this discussion about Europe's reliance on gas from Russia coming through Ukraine, and the fact that they constantly argue year after year about unpaid bills, whether they pay them or not, how big or how small they are. Now, obviously, this year we have the political and military crisis in eastern Ukraine and Russia, sanctions between Russia, the West, the US. It's so much more complicated this year. and there's so much more at stake this year.
Yes, absolutely, there's more at stake. Where I think, you know, certainly with that Ukrainian pipeline, there's a lot at stake. But when you look at the other pipelines, I think less so, because if you look at what Russia needs as well is 70% of its exports are oil and gas. 50% of the government revenue is oil and gas, and you know, about 20-something% of GDP is oil and gas. 16% of GDP is oil and gas. So they're really heavily reliant for their budget on oil and gas.
All right, Cornelia, thank you very much indeed. Very interesting indeed. And of course, that event's ongoing in Singapore. And we will keep across any announcements, any arrangements that are discussed there as we look towards those winter months. Thanks, Cornelia. Now, let's talk about what's going on in China. Activity in their manufacturing sector unexpectedly picked up in September, even as factories